Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, Bootstrapping Your Brand, Building Visibility Without Breaking the Bank. Thank you for joining us today to hear about marketing optimization tips for large businesses as well as small organizations such as CTG. For those of you who aren't familiar with us, I'll introduce Dave Colliver, President and Founder of CTG, to provide a little background. Dave?
Hey, everybody. Hey, Lauren, thank you so much. Thank you so much for everyone attending today. We have folks from literally everywhere around the world, so it's super exciting to do this. And I first should mention, we tell our clients to have a webinar strategy, and yet this is our first webinar, right, Lauren, that we've ever done. So
Yeah.
a little slightly embarrassed to say that, but there's always a first, right? So super excited to do this. A little bit about CTG. I started CTG back in May of 2015, and we've been providing sales and marketing services to primarily tech-based businesses ever since. Literally from around the world. Had a client in London, Silicon Valley, Boston, and typically they've been kind of subcategories of data storage, cybersecurity, fintech, life sciences. And then we work with publicly traded companies. We work with companies backed by private equity, and then also some startups that have venture capital and angel money. So we've kind of seen sales and marketing organizations across the board, right? So, and then a little bit about me. You spent 17 years in the industry as a quota carrying salesperson. So I understand the stresses that is all about, as well as been a marketer, individual contributor marketer, as well as I've managed marketing teams and sales teams. So I've kind of seen a little bit from that perspective as well. Have a U of M degree, if there's any Wolverines on the call, and then I have an MBA from University of Colorado. So pass it to you, Lauren. A little bit about you.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. I've been with CTG for just about 3 years now, and I focus on the marketing and demand generation functions for our business as well as supporting our clients. So let's get into the reason we're all here today. There's been some budgetary pressure across the board. Dave, can you tell us a little bit about these headlines and the trends we're seeing?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, this is primarily U.S. focused, but so I'll just preface that. But, you had to be living under a rock without knowing that the tech industry last year was really hit hard with layoffs. I think the number, Lauren, is around 280,000 people or something like that, 260,000, excuse me, that were let go. And a lot of it's the soft skill jobs, marketing, sales, project managers that were left go. So that put tremendous pressure on those that were left, right? So as you can see, Gartner, as they always do, put out wonderful surveys. They say that chief marketing officers, they're seeing the lack of budget is hampering their ability to actually execute on the strategy and the plans that they put into place. And we're continuing to see that in 2024. Just recently, I saw that Cisco was laying off 5%. Pure Storage, a big data storage company that's a client, laid off 5% a few weeks ago. So these layoffs seem to be continuing to occur. And then finally, 2/3 of the marketers reported their budgets going down mid-year last year, right? So budgets are shrinking, yet they still need to get the jobs done, right? They still need to get strategies in place and executed.
Yeah, absolutely. And organizations are left wondering, how do they meet these goals with the restricted budget and the restricted resources? So that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. We have 4 tips for all of you to help build visibility without breaking the bank. And we'll get into our first one of leaning into your network. So this can seem a little obvious, but it's often overlooked that you do have resources around you, and there are ways to support your business, support other businesses. And Dave, do you want to tell us a little bit more about ways to lean into your network?
Sure. Yeah. So I like the term that you're using, Lauren, is lean. And you've heard me say this before. It's a business term, business vernacular. Say, hey, you got to leverage your network, leverage your network. Well, I don't know why it is, but I like the term lean a little bit better. So I just wanted to make sure I state that, and that kind of falls in line with that first bullet from the standpoint of kindness first. And what does that mean? You're trying to give, right? Not just give to get all the time. And maybe you're putting a little karma in the world. So what I mean by that is maybe you're sharing one of your partner's social media posts, and you're sharing it not necessarily to hoping in return you're going to get something, but you're just sharing it for, hey, putting some karma in the world. So let's just have that as the mindset in the very beginning of this slide, right? Easier said than done sometimes, but let's just keep it high level there. So some examples. So some large organizations that we've worked with, they've done co-hosted events. So not only is the main vendor in charge paying the whole bill for the event, but now they're spreading the bill to the partners that are attending that event as well. And therefore, that's making it a little easier to do the event itself, right? So we've seen that example. So from the standpoint of joint events and assets, we've done some webinars in the past where it's not necessarily just us, but we're partnering with a complementary company that has complementary products or services to the same target market that we're both going after. So we've seen some success there. And then when we say individual events and assets, we do a newsletter every month, and so we'll promote some of our partner folks. I think in the last one, White Lauren, we had Adam Lorton, an AI specialist. We're promoting, as well as an entrepreneur operating system consultant that we know and trust, and so we're promoting their brand. So there are ways to do these joint campaigns and leaning into your network.
Yeah, absolutely. It really comes down to that mutual value for both of your audiences and finding that overlap of where you can provide the best services and resources for your audience. And so we've seen this happen not only with small businesses like us, but large brands such as Netflix and Spotify. They'll go into a campaign together to promote across multiple channels, sharing the load of the promotion and the campaign to help get the message out to a broader audience.
Yeah.
And that goes right into another low-cost way to do that. Dave, you mentioned sharing posts on social media, and this goes down to organic thought leadership, and it's a low-cost way to help spread the word and support your partners. Dave, do you want to expand on our thoughts here a little bit?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, in our line of work, we see LinkedIn as the primary social media platform that gets the most bang for your buck, if you will. I think most folks on the call will agree that it's pretty well known. LinkedIn works pretty well in that. But there's a gentleman, a social media guru out there. You probably have heard of him. If not, I'd definitely Google it, Gary Vaynerchuk. And he's all about social media and leveraging it. If you're small businesses as well as enterprises, it's the most bang for your buck, the least amount of cost for the most amount of reach, right? And we did an experiment in the fall where it was 30 days posting on LinkedIn, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter and X, if you will. And I must say, we saw it was a lot of work. I'll tell you that it was a lot of work to come up with engaging content or interesting stuff to put out there. But I'll tell you that we had about 5 legit leads, discussions, conversations that came out of that. And so was it a lot of work? Yes. Was it just work and free? Yes. So I would say engage with your social network first. Thought leadership, another kind of obvious statement, but volunteer to be on a podcast, volunteer to do a speaking engagement, volunteer to write a blog post, right? These are all ways that you can talk about the challenges your industry faces and become a thought leader. And you're not necessarily paying Google AdWords or Facebook or LinkedIn for some sort of advertising fee. It's all on your own. Are you going to get more reach with spending the money? Yes, but this webinar is about getting the most bang for your buck, bootstrapping when belts are tight. So finally, the third block here, executive and sales enablement. So if you're tuned in and you're a mid-level marketer at a 1,000 employee tech company, and you're saying, you know what, Dave, I don't really feel like going on social media every day and talking about it. And those are my personal profiles and personal accounts. I'm not going to do that. I get it. Okay, that's fine. But what you can do is you can enable your sales team who's interfacing with prospects and customers every day. And you can enable your executives, perhaps the CEO, the founder, perhaps the CMO, perhaps the COO, and enable them with content to post, right? And again, this is all about getting the most bang for your buck with the least amount of cost and setting up some sort of social media strategy. So that's an idea too. So.
Yeah, great points, Dave. And it's hard to ignore the stats we have there on the bottom. Those came from LinkedIn and HubSpot. So 4 in 5 B2B leads come from LinkedIn, and 73% of adults log into Facebook daily. So that goes to show that if you're not present on these networks, staying top of mind, you're really missing out on a channel to get in front of your audience and stay relevant and sharing that important information with them.
Excuse me.
And social media is another great place where you can create groups for your customers to engage with each other or discuss topics on relevant information. And that goes right into our next tip, which is to foster a community. And Dave, do you want to share a little bit more about how we foster communities and how we can build that connection?
Sure. Yeah. And so this slide goes to that age-old saying that it's costs a heck of a lot less to retain your current customers than it is to go out and find new ones, right? And in this day and age, with the economy the way it is, that seems like a very intelligent strategy. Is like, okay, let's retain our current client base versus always spending a lot more to go out and get new logos. So how do you do that? Well, you do it through community. And we've seen some larger organizations utilize different, there's all sorts of different ways to foster a community. We've seen the use of community management tools. There's a subset, if you go to Google, there's a subsection of tools called community management. And we were familiar with a tool called Influitive, where let's just call it like a Facebook for your customers. And it's not like some of these tech organizations, it's like you're selling a donut and they're going to buy it every day. It's like they're going to buy something and they might not buy anything for another 3 years, right? So how do you kind of nurture that relationship? Well, you can do it through some of these community management platforms. A lot of companies are using Slack and Discord of kind of like having some sort of community within these other sub-channels. At a much smaller level, or maybe large businesses do this, but even small businesses, it's the age-old email marketing and the nurturing. We've taken our own medicine on this and really gotten pretty down to, we haven't missed one yet for 13 months, right, Lauren? monthly newsletters, right? And so always touching our client base with information of value, right? I mean, I get a newsletter daily from certain companies, right? So they're always in front of me. Does that mean I'm reading it? Does that mean it's a heck of a lot of work for that company to actually create the content? Yes, but they are getting in front. So if you have, in the smaller businesses, it's the MailChimps, it's the Constant Contacts. Somewhat larger businesses, we use HubSpot here. Perhaps there's folks on the call that use like a Marketo or use like a Pardot, but it all just depends. So really making sure you're leveraging your marketing automation tool on that. And then finally, my final point on this is a mentor once told me, he's like, you need to make sure you're leveraging your CRM. Again, we use HubSpot, and you're really keeping an eye on that 90-day touch point with your clients and your past clients and friends of your company. And that might be partners or folks that are cheerleaders for your company. And so if you have it set up where it's been past 90 days and you haven't touched base with those people, providing some value or some information, then that's something to yellow flag. And that's something, so you should always be touching those types of folks in your network. Anything else, Lauren?
Yeah, you're exactly right, Dave. One thing that I will point out is this doesn't have to be digital. So
Yeah,
fostering a community can be in person too. We've seen a shift to digital in the past few years with working from home and remote work. But we here in Traverse City are very involved with a tech incubator, 20 Fathoms, where we've built amazing connections and they have wonderful resources that support businesses like ours. And to be able to build those relationships with other people in your community, in your field, they help keep you top of mind and you're in the know of what they're doing. So then if someone asks about a service or is running into a problem, they're more likely to think of you and your brand because of the relationships that you've built.
no, that's a really good point.
And it all comes down to trust, right? So you're building trust, you're building relationships, you're staying in touch with these people. And that's really what's going to keep people coming back.
Good. Yeah.
And that brings us to our final point to hopefully save some headaches. And it's to not be afraid to contract support when you need it. So it's easy as a small business to say, oh, I know how to do that, or I'll find time to do that. But we all know that's not always the case, where things fall off or you takes way longer than you think it does because you're stumbling your way through it. So contracting support can be helpful for project-based work, or if you're looking for specialized skills to plug into your team. We've seen this work. And Dave, can you explain why this tends to be successful?
Sure. Yeah. Again, it's the folks on the call, or maybe what I'm going to say, it's fairly obvious, but it kind of hit me hard. I was talking to a Silicon Valley marketing executive, and he was explaining to me how headcount is everything, especially in large organizations. But when the economy is uncertain, that headcount number is being looked at by the CFO, by the board, and it's getting scrutinized, right? And so it's hard to get full-time hires approved. And then that's not even the worst of it. They're looking at how to reduce the headcount, right? So how do you get around that if you're in a marketing function and you still have goals to hit, right? And so you do that through discretionary budget, to be honest with you. And how do you use discretionary budget? You can use it for contractors, right? To still get the jobs done. And so we've seen this time and time again. Publicly traded data storage company, they utilized it for community management to have someone to actually run this tool that I mentioned. That's Facebook for your own customers. We've seen it where kind of a marketing manager generalist, where the person is helping with webinars, helping with newsletters, helping with reporting. So we've seen that to be another contracted role. We've seen it where we were working with a director of enterprise marketing at a SaaS company, more or less like, let's just say 1,000 employees. And you know what? She could not hire full time, yet she needed an account-based marketing strategy and kind of to execute. And so she reached out to CTG to find an ABM specialist, right, to come on board and in a contracted fashion and help with that. So, so we've seen it play itself out where contractors might make more sense. You know, on the slide, talking to the slide, obviously cost flexibility. You know, it's usually in a quarterly type contract or 6-month type contract. Quick deployment. You know, we've seen it from a raising of a hand of interest to actually someone boots on the ground, maybe like a couple weeks to kind of get it all going. Versus you think of your interview process these days. Wow, that takes a long time, right? Your candidate might be talking to 3, 4, 5, 6 people before HR can get involved and get them a job offer, right? And then it's the reduced administrative burden. So goes without saying, when a contractor environment, you're shaving off 30% of those benefits, overhead costs. So that's gone. And then we all know if things aren't going right with a full-time hire, kind of unraveling yourself from that full-time hire is a little bit more complicated, right? Whereas with a contractor, end of the contract, and then you don't have to renew it, right? So, so there are some benefits. Am I forgetting anything? Well, Lauren, the one thing I should say is if your organization is $0 to $5 million in revenue, I would say take a look at like virtual assistants out there. Take a look at the Upworks. Take a look at the freelancers.com, and just see maybe there's ways that maybe it's not marketing, maybe it's outsourced sales, maybe it's outsourced HR, maybe it's outsourced finance, right? Just think through that a little bit. If you're $5 million and above, that's when perhaps CTG can kind of come in and say, yeah, we can find you an expert in the CTG referral network and get them plugged in.
Exactly. I mean, we all know time is money. So sometimes it's worth that cost to keep you focused on what you need to be working on in your day to day. So, and I will just add that we've all heard doing more with less, especially with all of the cuts, and contracted support can be helpful in keeping your employees feeling supported. Yeah. So once you have someone hired and they're doing the work, but they keep being asked to do more with less, eventually they're going to burn out. And so plugging a resource in to help temporarily, that can help them stay satisfied, keep them working at full speed without causing any turmoil on that side as well.
Good point.
Well, that wraps up our 4 tips. Dave, any final takeaways?
No, I'm just excited for the final slide. So that's what I'm excited for.
Well, before we get to that, just a quick reminder of the services we offer here at CTG. Please reach out if there's any way we can provide extra support for you. And that leads us to our last slide, which is a thank you to everyone attending, and also keep an eye out for an AI assisted marketing webinar coming soon. Yeah. So that can be the 5th tip of bootstrapping your brand. AI is on the rise, and it's another tool that if you're not using it, you maybe should be, to save yourself some time and resources. So subscribe to the CTG newsletter to stay up to date on the latest. And thank you again for joining. And Dave, thank you for a great conversation today. So have a great day, everyone.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.